Welcome to Larp Academia, and we're on part 2 of our Introduction to Magic, and this is going to talk about the basics of magic, what each type of magic is and what you can do with magics. Now, there are 5 types of magics. There are metamagics, neutrals, spellballs, verbals, and enchantments. We'll go over the easiest ones to cover first. Neutral magic, it's there. It's there for you. Neutral, I also kind of lump in the same vein of equipment because neutral is constant and equipment is just, oh, hey little buddy, you can use a short sword. Yay, you can use a short sword. I mean, it's always there. You can always use a short sword, which is why I lump equipment kind of in the same vein as neutral. It's just a passive effect that is always there or something that you can always do. Or it's a magic that doesn't really have a school of its own because it's not really counterable and it's not affecting other people. It's either affecting you or something else that's irrelevant to others. Now, along with something that affects other spells, metamagics are also neutral, so I know this is kind of cheating, but metamagics affect another spell, which is why it kind of went into it as neutral, that it could affect other things. But metamagics are used before a spell and will affect that spell. Why do I say before? Because you can't say, Timmy, I community stop, ambulant. No, you have to say it before the spell. You have to say, ambulant, Timmy, I community stop. Maybe do a little groove or shake or whatever. But something that you need to understand is that metamagics affect other spells. They don't affect other metamagics. So if I say, extension ambulant, Timmy, I command, my spell's not extended anymore. Metamagics do not affect other metamagics. You have to start the spell. Now, where it's kind of weird is that if you say extension ambulant, Timmy, I community stop, at that point it's fine because I'm starting the spell. If I cast a metamagic, state another metamagic, that benefit from the metamagic does not apply to that last one, which is why if I started to move, when I said extension ambulant, my extension doesn't go off. Well, it did. It went off and it was used, but it was used on nothing. So that's a little bit of confusion there for metamagics, but it's something to be cautious of, is stating metamagics before your spells and that they don't affect other metamagics. Just keep your feet planted until you've said all your metamagics if you have multiple metamagics. Now, the next thing that we're going to cover is verbals. Anything that is magical usually has an incant. When you cast a spell, you need to have your feet planted. I mean, you can move your upper body, but you can't move your feet. They're rooted to the ground, and you need an open hand. If I am pretending to be Gandalf, I don't have an open hand. Well, okay, technically this is not wielded because it's not a legal thing on the field, which is, don't bring this on the field. Just don't bring this confusion. But if I had a real staff, or if I had a legal staff and a sword, I could not cast spells. Something again very important to note. Feet planted, need to have an open hand. Yay, now that I do have an open hand, I need to declare my target if it is at a range of 20 feet or more. If it's touch, I don't need to say, me, I command thee to be lost, I command thee to be lost, I command thee to be lost. No, I can just say, I command thee to be lost, I command thee to be lost, I command thee to be lost. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, lost is a 20-foot verbal. Yes, I use it at the range of touch. For things like monks who are unaffected by things greater than the range of touch, your 20-foot limit is up to 20 feet. If I go up to you when you're frozen and say, hey buddy, my power shatters thy body, my power shatters thy body, my power shatters thy body, boop, then they're dead. Now, the only thing that matters with your incants is at the end of the spell. You could start out with someone being 25 feet away who's charging you. Barbarian, my power shatters thee, my power shatters thee, my power shatters thee. He ends within 10 feet of me, and now he's shoved. Note, I did not need to start the spell within 20 feet. The only thing that matters is the end of it. Same with vision. If I am blocked by a wall, I can say, ambulant, monk, a couple things that pull, a couple things hit the pole, a couple things hit that pole. See how I moved? Normally I couldn't see them. Now I can, and all that matters is at the end of the spell. So that's one thing that's important with all spells, a little bit more than just verbals, but on to specific verbal bits. So now that you are educated, you need to learn about target declarations. I said that you don't need to declare your target if they're in the range of touch. But if someone is more than touch, a foot away, 2 feet, whatever, or is an unwilling target, generally, or someone who doesn't fit the status of being able to be affected by a touch spell, then you will have to declare your target. You either have to do it by saying the person's name, Timmy, or you will have to point, say their class, and give a unique descriptor. So if I say, Timmy, I command, that's fine. But if I say, assassin in black, I command stop, I command stop, I command stop. Well, it's a little complicated there, because let's think about it. How many assassins wear black? Yeah, a lot of them. So if Timmy is the only assassin on the field, then that's fine. If Timmy is the only assassin in black, that's fine. In fact, if there's only one warrior on the field, you could say warrior with a shield. I know it sounds a little cheesy and everything that you could say warrior with a shield, but if they're the only warrior, that's a unique descriptor, man. Warrior with a shield. What other warrior has a shield? None. Okay, unique. There you go. I would recommend against this habit though, because it brings you into a bad habit. You start to say warrior with a shield when there are multiple warriors on the field, and you might not know that there's a second warrior on the field. Generally, if you're pointing in that direction, it helps a little bit, but you should try to make your unique or descriptive. The second part is that you need to be audible. If you are having a touch spell cast, you need to be heard within 20 feet. So you can't say, no. No one can hear that. No one. If I was 20 feet away, I could not hear that. Even if I say, it's mumbling. It does not count. You need to have a count up to 20 feet, or let someone 20 feet away hear it. If it is a 20-foot spell, someone 50 feet away need to hear it, etc. You need to be loud with your spells. It's always better to be loud than to be silent. If you get into the habit of this, you will actually be able to cast verbals in a giant battle game, and people will take them because you'll be very loud. People will look at you, and then they'll see where they're pointing. Well, they'll see where you're pointing, and then they'll realize, oh, that's me, after they hear the unique descriptor and it registers in their brain. The second part is that you need to be understandable. Now, this is where you need to enunciate. If I say, that's not the heal spell. That's not the heal spell. You need to say it to where someone could understand it. So if I say, you can understand that. Now, to someone who's untrained and doesn't actually know the incant, they're not going to be able to understand it, and that's fine. They're not the people we're catering to. We're catering to the people who would actually be able to understand it. If you're doing an offensive verbal, usually they're only one line, so it's not that hard. For example, Timmy, I command thee stop, I command thee stop, I command thee stop. You could understand that I was saying, I command thee to stop. And I enunciated, well, I said everything, but I enunciated the certain parts where a player would be able to understand that. I might go over how to do drills and how to actually do speed casting in the future, but you need to be understandable. Now, that is all with verbal magic. I know, a little bit to cover, but oh wait, no it's not. We still need to cover the frequency. Unlike neutral and equipment, which is forever, verbals can either be per life or per refresh. It's very simple. Per refresh is you use it and it's gone until the reef calls refresh, which is usually once a game, or should be once a game. Watch our part 1 to see why it should be once a game. And or 30 minutes or later. Or per life, when you die, you get them back. That does not mean when you are resurrected, you get them back. You do not get them back when resurrected. I cannot emphasize this enough. Resurrection is not as good as people think. Whatever per lives you've used, stay used until you resurrect at nirvana naturally. You can get them back by a bard, but that's in the bard section that we'll eventually get to as well. So that's per lives. Now, the next thing that we'll get into is magic balls. Now, magic balls, or spell balls, are a little bit weirder. You actually have to have a component in order to use it. And there are a bunch of different ways on how to build spell balls. I have a video on that. I'll link in the description down below on kind of spell balls in general. And we even have an article on it on our website about different spell ball variations. So I would recommend giving that a read since it goes a little bit more into spell ball creation. But when using spell balls, you need to remember that spell balls are not something that count against your open hand. So if I was to cast a spell at someone, I could say, Timmy, I command this up, I command this up, I command this up. I have my staff in my hand and I have spell balls. They do not count as wielded. You still have an open hand because this is a material component. If I charge my spell ball, Swift, the Strength of Earth is mine to evoke, and then I say, Timmy, I command this up, I command this up, I command this up. It's still fine. It's still fine because this is still a material component even when active. Now, speaking about that, in order to activate your spell balls, you need to say an incant with your feet planted and an open hand. The only difference with this is that you need to be touching your spell ball at the end of it. If I was casting a heal spell, I could say, Swift, while I'm healed thee, and my foot's touching Jimmy over here, then Jimmy's fine. I don't need to touch with my hand. With the spell ball, at the end of the incant, I need to have it. So I could say, the Strength of Earth is mine to evoke, the Strength of Earth is mine to evoke, the Strength of Earth is mine to evoke. Notice how I did not have this spell ball in hand when I started that incant. You do not need it in hand. Again, the only thing that matters for magic is at the very end, or if you get interrupted by moving your feet or something. But, or having a non-open hand, but then you can't cast anyways. So again, the only thing that matters is at the end of the spell. Now, once you have it charged, you can transfer it from hand to hand. That's fine. If you go, oopsies, I am now entangled because it was not transferring from hand to hand. It dropped and I caught it. That time I did not, but I would still be entangled. So spell balls are a little harder to use as well because you need to actually hit your target. This is where skill comes in to actually throw. You want, free tip, if you throw like this, you throw wrong. You throw wrong. It throws high, it's slow, it's just like, oh, it's coming. All right, flop. Not that big of a deal. If you actually throw from your side, like baseball, it could be a little overhand, it could be, I prefer the sideways, but you need to actually torque and use your body properly to throw a decent spell ball. Once you do that, it also, if you throw it properly, will aim towards center of mass so that it will hit something. Your goal is not be like, this guy's 30 feet away, I'm gonna snipe his arm. That's dumb, you'll miss. I've thrown spell balls for 14 years. I've made good spell balls. I still miss these spell balls if I try to aim at a certain part. Just aim for center of mass, hit the person. Center of mass is probably what you want anyways, unless they have a shield, but then you should get the appropriate spell ball and it's all good. Now, the appropriate spell ball. Spell balls have different colors. Some spell balls are blue, some spell balls are brown, some spell balls are red, some spell balls are yellow, and there's other spell ball colors that don't matter right now. So each color does a different thing. That's how people are able to identify it. With a verbal, you would declare your target, you would yell the incant at them so that they know what's going on and then they can take it. With a spell ball, they just look at what they were hit with and say, oh, crap, I'm hit with that. Now, each spell ball is different, but their activation effects when hitting someone can be cut into two different sections. You have one, which is a normal shot. For example, oh, it needs to actually hit a leg. It needs to hit someone if it just whooshes across my robe and it doesn't stop or deflect the spell ball. It just barely grazes it. I mean, if I hold my robe out, I can't block it because I'll just take the shot. Just, that doesn't work. But if your spell ball is in this category where it needs to hit someone, then it won't affect their robe or garb or whatever else. If you have an engulfing effect on your spell ball, like the entangle ball I just had, if it hits a person's garb or even their foot on ground or anything like that, it will engulf them and they will suffer the effects. And the frequency of spell balls is a little bit confusing when it says 2/unlimited, 3/unlimited, 1/unlimited. That means you can carry that many spell balls on your person. So if I have 2 purchases of 3/unlimited, I can carry 6 of those spell balls on my person at a time. This does not mean that I am unable to have a garbage can in the back filled with those spell balls. Oh no, I could have 200 spell balls on the field, but I can only carry 6 of those spell balls. The unlimited part is because when I throw them, I can pick them up and use them again. It's not per life or per refresh, it's just pick your spell balls up. Now, usually you can pick other people's spell balls up. Some people will say, oh no, you can't, and you should get permission first. Generally, well, it depends where you are, but from what my experience is that generally most people are fine with using spell balls if it's in a wide open area. If it's in a forested area or in a place where people could lose spell balls, just don't common courtesy, don't try to lose a person's spell ball. But if you are of the opinion that we're in an open field, no one can use my spell ball or they'll probably lose it, it is an open field. I mean, you have as much chance to lose it as another person, which is pretty much zero. The only time that you'd lose it is if you throw it really far and really wide, which that person will probably be losing all their spell balls anyway. So I mean, it's a very small chance to lose your spell ball depending on the terrain that you're in, or a very high chance. And if you are ever concerned about sharing spell balls, ask beforehand, is anyone not okay with sharing spell balls? And in a big battle game, spell balls are usually the best because they will be reusable. While you can run out of per lives and per refreshes, spell balls should be thrown to each side and you should be able to pick them up. Now, I say usually because you might have a bard friend, you might be in a kingdom where they don't realize that spell balls are good, whatever other reason. Now, on to the last one. Oh, this is the one that most spellcasters get confused with, and, well, no, just everyone. Everyone gets confused with this. All right, so, enchantments. Enchantments are at a range of touch, or self. Normally, with a verbal, if you say range of touch, then you can touch someone or yourself. And when you touch someone else, they either have to be wheeling or they have to be unable to move and engage in combat. So that means like frozen or stunned, really, that's it. Or shadow stepped. For enchantments, if it says self, you may only place it on yourself. If it says touch or others, depending on which version of the rulebook, it should say others. If it says others, you can only use it on others. You cannot enchant yourself. Okay? All right, good. Now, the next important thing of enchantments is to know the different strips and types. You need to be able to represent your enchantments. Enchantment strips can look like this. It could be a torn off piece of cloth, something like this. You could put it on your sash or whatever. It just needs to be visible. Now, there are 3 types of enchantments, classification-wise. There are the defensive enchantments. If you see someone wearing a white strip, it's usually defensive. There are offensive enchantments, usually red strip, meant to kill you. And then there are yellow, which is technically neutral, but really what I call weird. It's something that affects you, is not strictly defensive, is not strictly offensive, but it's weird. It might give an immunity, it might give you an ability. It's just weird. That's what yellow is for. Or it's something like attune. It doesn't do things standardly, it changes stuff up, and you got to be ready for whatever this person's enchant is. Now, something that's great is that if you are colorblind, people do have to declare enchantments before they engage. This applies to martial enchantments as well, or extraordinary. Now, what this means is at a reasonable time. If you are in a big battle and you declare your enchantments poison and then go and engage, you should probably state poison 3 minutes later or 2 minutes later if you still have it, because it would probably be gone by then. For most enchants, like let's say a stone skin, I'll probably have it 5 minutes later, so you should, I might have it 5 minutes later. So you should declare about every 5 minutes, or whenever you can before you engage. So if we're one-on-one, we don't want to fight, have you hit me, you walk off and I say, oh, stone skin, and hit you. No, that's wrong. The person who has stone skin is dead because they didn't declare it at a reasonable time. If you walk up to someone, you see them and you're about to fight, and you say stone skin, then you're fine. Just try to declare before you're engaged. If you're fighting and someone hits you in the back, try to say stone skin as soon as you can. As soon as you can to let them know. But again, if someone ambushes you, it's on them. Now, this also is really weird when it applies to things like an assassin or someone sneaking up on another person. If they have poison, they need to say poison and then go. You don't say poison or poison right there when your shot's in motion. That's not reasonably before you engage. That's not That's not anything like that. You have to declare poison and then swing, or something along those lines. My recommendation is always declare your enchantments before you start your swing. Otherwise, it's not reasonable and you're not giving enough time for people to know. This is the hardest thing. You will have to tell other people who you enchant to do this. They will not 90% of the time. You might need to babysit them or get the reeve on them, but you need to declare your enchantments. Now, along with how many enchantments you can only have one enchantment per person unless you're weird. Like a scout or a druid makes them weird, whatever else, or it's an extraordinary enchantment or an enchantment that doesn't stack. Again, normally just one enchantment unless it's weird. For activating enchantments, this is the part where people screw up 90% of the time. An enchantment does what it says it does. Revolutionary, I know. But think about this. I have 3 blessings against wound on myself, somehow, and I also have 2 ward selves, somehow. Don't question it. But let's say I have this many enchants. Someone hits my arm. What do you think happens? Do you think a blessing against wound gets activated, a ward self, or what? Well, I'll tell you, it's none of those. All of them are activated. I have those 5 enchantments on, 1 hit to my arm. All of them are activated. Why are they activated? They are activated because it states when receiving a wound for blessing against wound, or receiving a wound, or yada yada, whatever else for ward self. You received a wound. All of them are activated. All of them are gone. You cannot stack resistant type effects. They're both, well, all of them are used if they apply to that condition. This also applies to armor. Let's say I'm a wizard, I'm trying to survive, and this is mainly for you casters out there who are trying to survive. I know because I may have caused a huge controversy over this in the past, but if you have a gift of air, if you are struck by a projectile, you go insubstantial or hit by a normal melee weapon, whatever, we'll get into gift of air later. But if you are struck by a projectile and you have stone skin and gift of air, both activate. You lose a point of armor because the prerequisites is that it's armor and you're hit, and you are struck by a projectile, so you go insubstantial. This is a little thing that I caused a controversy on for a while when I was trying to figure it out, but this is a very common issue that people have. People don't remember that spells do what they say they do. They activate when they activate. They activate when they're supposed to activate. You cannot stack resistance enchantments, and you should be very careful with the enchantments that you give. Now, enchantments also, because we're not done, of course, enchantments are always a bit more complicated, they ignore the person's immunities. What that means is that if I'm an anti-paladin and I'm immune to flame, cast Flame Blade on me, whatever, I'm immune. And the enchantments may grant immunities to a person, but they don't, but they do, bleh, but they ignore that person's immunities. So you can enchant people with whatever you freaking want. And we're not done, because something else that 90% of people forget with enchantments is that they are dormant upon death. So when you're dead and you're like, oh, I have pro-mag, well, you're cursed, but you're not protected from magic. So if you have Enlightened Soul and you're dead, you can't say, oh, yuck, I'm protected from that spell. I have Enlightened Soul. Well, you're dead. It's inactive. However, if you are not brought back to life by a greater resurrect, or your enchantment is not persistent, then it will be gone. So if you're resurrected normally, remember how I said resurrect before wasn't as good as you thought it was, then all your enchantments are gone that are not persistent. If you are resurrected at Nirvana normally, all your enchantments are gone. If someone does a greater resurrect by the grace of the divine, then you are resurrected with those enchantments even if they were non-persistent. Now those are the basics of magic. I know that seems really complicated, and by basics it was pretty much a PowerPoint lecture. I didn't have a board. I instead wanted to make it nicer with the good scenery and the changing daylight, since nature it doesn't know what it wants to do. But I hope that you enjoyed this little bit of the basic explanations of magic. Hopefully you learned something, and there was a lot to cover. If you still have a question about something, or think that I missed something important about the basics of magic, Please leave a comment down in the comment section down below, and check our description for the part 1 of this series, and like and subscribe to stay tuned for part 2 and to learn a little bit more about magic. Until next time, keep LARPing and actually use your spells correctly.